Welcome to Kaufman Conversations, a podcast where we sit down and talk with people behind the work. From agents and auctioneers to industry experts, colleagues, and occasionally just people we find interesting. This is a place for open conversations about things that shape our business and the communities around us. We'll cover topics ranging from real estate and auctions to market trends, lessons learned in the field, and practical tips from people who have spent years in the industry. But it doesn't stop there. We'll also wander into conversations about the outdoors, sports, business, and family, and the stories behind the names you may have heard, but may not really know. The goal is simple: pull back the curtain. Share experiences, insights, and maybe a few lessons learned the hard way along the way. Think of it less of a formal interview and more of pulling up a chair at the table after a long day and having a good conversation with people who have seen a thing or two. Whether you're in real estate, auctions, business, or simply curious about how markets and the people work, we're glad you're here. I'm Anthony Kaufman. This is Kaufman Conversations. Let's get started. Today, we're joined by Curt Yoder. Curt Yoder is an auctioneer, agent, and partner with Kaufman Realty and Auctions. He spent 25 years in the industry. He focuses on all forms of real estate as well as equipment and a specialty in farm equipment. Beyond his experience here, he's also my brother-in-law, and I have to say that he is my favorite brother-in-law. We're also joined by Patrick Kaufman. Patrick is my brother. He is a partner as well as an agent and an auctioneer here with the company. He's spent approximately 20 years here in the industry, and he specializes in real estate, all forms of real estate, as well as auctions. So just a bit of a background on those. Curt, I'm going to turn to you to start with. Like to get maybe some of your working background, where you grew up, and maybe just a little bit of a sense of who you are for those who may not know Curt Yoder.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. It's fun to do this. My background starts in northern Indiana, Middlebury. I was born and raised on a farm there. My dad's still farming, 90 years old. So some of my background, obviously I helped dad on the farm starting at a very young age. We raised hogs and beef cattle. Might have still been a farmer if we didn't have hogs. So I hated the hogs. I grew up there. I also worked, my brother-in-law had a car lot. I would help over at the shop, cleaning cars, various things like that. So odds and ends jobs like that. When I was coming out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as a career, but I went and started working for a local water softening company that delivered salt, of all things. So I carried salt bags up and down stairs every day. And then I did a little bit of landscaping, and then I met your guys' sister, and the rest is history.
Yeah, so Curt, just a little bit more background on that. Give me a little bit of details when you met our one and only sister, Erica, which is why you're our favorite brother-in-law. Tell us a little bit about when you met her, how that transpired, how you became the only Yankees fan in our family. Maybe a little background there.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. But first of all, I met Erica when we were about 12 years old. She came out to a summer youth camp and became good friends with my cousin, who was kind of growing up. She was more my age than my own sister was. So we were very close, but Erica would come out and visit her. So we were friends for a long time, and then we went to Bible school together in Georgia and started dating after that. So that was, many moons ago. But met your sister that way. The reason I'm a Yankees fan, though, I feel like it's important to share because I get accused of being a bandwagon fan and just jumping onto the Yankees. But as a little kid, my parents were friends with a couple, and he was a diehard Yankees and more or less a Mickey Mantle fan. And when I was a little boy, he outfitted me in a Mickey Mantle uniform, and I was always hooked on the Yankees after that. So it is tough, which I found out real quickly. The Yankees are hated in the Kaufman household. The first time I came out to visit or to date Erica after Bible school, I came out with a Yankees hat, and I had my bag packed ready to go, and I had my hat sitting on the bag, and went back to do something else, come back out to grab my bag, and there was another hat sitting on top of it. And I asked Erica, I was like, what's up with this? And she said, well, She said, "You can't let my dad see you with a Yankees hat. That's so one of my brothers put that on there to save you." So I don't know if it was one of you two, but I appreciate it.
Well, we were looking out for you at an early age. Pat, I'm going to turn to you now. Obviously, we grew up together. We grew up in this industry, but give me a little bit of background. You and I, our paths kind of separated, Pat being a little bit younger than me. Just give us a little background for the listeners, kind of what it was for you from high school into your college career and then eventually transitioning into the workforce. Just give the listeners some background on exactly what your journey has looked like.
Well, yeah, graduated from Highland High School, 2000. During my high school years, I did masonry during the summer, as well as most of college, I did masonry. Also had the privilege of being a janitor when I was in college. So needless to say, I think that stuff, that made me realize what I didn't want to do when I was growing up. But just went to college, graduated there in 2004, I believe. Came back and have been working with Kaufman ever since.
Pat, do you think growing up with Dad, Dave, the founder of the company, did you ever at a young age foresee yourself being in this position? Did you think you'd not be a part of the industry?
I don't know. I kind of waffled back and forth kind of my whole life, what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing. But I would say in the back of my mind, yes, I kind of always did envision doing something like this. Now being with the company for 20 plus years, might not be exactly in the same role that I thought, but I don't know that I necessarily had a clear picture exactly what my workload would look like for Kaufman.
Gotcha. So I'm interested, Curt. Obviously, you came into the area. We had a little bit larger family. You coming from a little bit smaller family. Wonder if you have any initial impressions of what it was like when you met the Kaufman family, me being a little bit older, Pat then, and then Casey and Corey, the twins, being younger. Maybe you have a story or something like that you'd like to share about one of the first times you met us.
Well, I do have a story. In fact, back to that first weekend I came out, we all went to church together, and then after church, your mom had a Sunday lunch, and we were sitting there, and I come from a family of there's just two of us, my sister, and she was 9.5 years older than I was. So consequently, by 11 or so, she was married and was moved out of the house already. So I didn't have brothers. I always wanted a brother to tear around with, and what I experienced that Sunday lunch was felt like almost a breath of fresh air. There was tons of banter. There was sports to discuss. There was arguing back and forth. There was just constant action. And I just sat there taking it all in, and I thought, this is really fun. Well, we get ready to where everybody's pretty much done eating, and Pat gets up from the table, doesn't say a single word, walks behind your dad, Dave, and just takes his T-shirt and goes right over the top of his head. So he's standing behind your dad with his shirt up over his head. Nobody said a word. Dave didn't say a word. Dave didn't react. He just sat there. And I was just looking at this situation thinking, this is hilarious. And nobody's even commenting about it. Pat just pulls his shirt back off of his head and just walks out the room. And so that was one of my first impressions. But I was thinking, man, this is like the banter, the fun, the sports talk, all that was very refreshing to me. So that was one of my first family impressions when I showed up on the scene.
Oh, that's good. And I can say, having grown up with Pat, that was a minor enough incident that we didn't react to anything, because that was Pat.
Well, the reaction's kind of what you're after.
Right.
If you don't get it,
and nobody said a word, and your dad didn't react either, which I just thought was so funny.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, if you don't react to Pat's stunts, there's a good chance they're going to go away. Pat, do you have any initial impressions of meeting Curt, or is that something that you've kind of...
Well, initially meeting Curt, I mean, anybody that was dating my sister, I didn't like. So, I mean, I kind of grew into appreciating Curt, I would say first. But yeah, it was... you tend to, we certainly weren't overprotective, I don't think, of her, but there's just, it's my sister. I'm not going to like you right away.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that. I don't know that as brothers, we were superly overprotective of Erica, but yet we also were, who is this guy and what is he doing here? Let's make a bit of a transition here and start talking a little bit about some of the early years that you guys experienced with Kaufman. And I'm going to start with you, Pat, on this one. Do you have any thoughts or maybe a story or something from some of your early years? I know you spent a lot of time working with Cliff Sprang on the setup crew back in the early 2000s. Is there anything that you recall that sticks out to you? Maybe something that you saw from Dad that kind of formed your opinion of how Dad conducted business and what was expected from you in that role?
Exact stories. Mine's more of a just kind of a conglomeration. First of all, the working with Cliff, probably some of the best times in the business. We were doing setup crew, and we had the sign shop that we were making signs as well, which was kind of nice that we could kind of work as many hours as possible. We were getting paid on an hourly wage at that time. And back in those days, it was nothing to have one of those $1,500 to $2,000 content sales, which you almost can't get away with that today just based on price of marketing and advertising a property. But I remember many times that we'd go set up an auction in the morning for the next day and then go over to another site that we were having a content sale and work that auction. Probably just some of the best times as far as being able to go home and turn it off completely where work didn't follow you home. That was probably something that you kind of look back a little bit more fondly. I don't know, when I was in the doing the setup crew, I don't know that you probably appreciate it quite as much, but yeah, it was just learning all aspects of the business before I got my real estate license was probably pretty crucial.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it was definitely a different time. Things change. They improve in a lot of ways, but there's a simpler aspect to some of that stuff. I do, when you, if you get a chance to think about it here, Pat, I'm going to turn to Curt right now for maybe some insight from him, but possibly the story of you and Cliff and the home that got torched, if you could remember that one.
I believe Curt was involved in that as well.
Well, why don't we just get into that? I don't recall. Maybe the two of you can give us a little bit of insight into when you decided to burn off a house.
Okay, you go with your version.
Well, yeah. So, the early years for me were also, I started on the setup crew. I give a lot of credit to Dave and Anthony too for just giving a shot to this Indiana kid that they knew nothing about. I come out here, Erica and I were engaged to be married. I moved out, and I remember asking Erica, like, am I going to have a job? Or she's like, well, my dad doesn't really have any work for you. So he offered me to work with Junior Slaybaugh, setting sales up, and then gave me like a $200 a week salary. And so that's kind of how I started. But the specific story you're referring to, we were, this was kind of where, this is probably a few years in for me. We had a property that we were cleaning up for I can't remember exactly if it was real estate and contents, but for sure contents.
It was real estate as well.
Was it? Yeah, we were getting kind of, the property needed just some work. And so we were there setting the sale up. We had started a burn pile. And, this burn pile took on a route of its own, ended up catching the building on fire. And so we were scrambling as fast as we could to get as much stuff out of this building that we were trying to auction.
It was an abandoned house though, right?
Yeah, it was like an abandoned house, but they were using it for storage. They had
Christmas stuff.
That was a mess. We called the fire department, and it was, I wouldn't advise that. That was not a good idea.
Well, if I remember right, the property, it needed a ton of TLC, and I think we had 4 different burn piles going. And give you an idea, wasn't there a pile of just diapers?
Probably.
That was sitting out there that we tried to burn, and we figured out very quickly diapers don't burn.
They melt.
Then the wind shifted, and I remember they had specifically said, don't burn the house off, whatever, and we kind of joked or we kind of laughed about it beforehand.
Generally not a request you hear.
Well, it's quite honestly, the property sold a lot better. because that was gone. Obviously, it's not how we intended on getting there, but I mean, in the long run, it actually did improve the property.
So we got into property improvement at that point. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I think that is one of the most rewarding things in this business was like when I was doing setup work and you could clean a property up and just like a full day of cleanup, getting rid of trash, stuff like that, and seeing what it was as opposed to what you turned it into, and just, a little bit of elbow grease, how much that improves the value on a property. I think that's probably one of the most, we don't talk about it enough, but I think that's extremely rewarding in this business.
Right. Well, I think that's a great segue into talking a little bit more about today, about where we're at today, and maybe talking through some different things that you guys are seeing. Obviously, Curt, you're involved in different markets. Pat, you're doing a lot more in the northeastern Ohio, getting up into that Geauga County, Ashtabula area, and you have some insights there. Curt, I'm going to pivot to you a little bit, maybe from a market condition standpoint. Could you talk a little bit about what you're seeing from a real estate standpoint in some of the different areas that you serve?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, as of today, the market conditions, at least in what I'm working in, is pretty good. The outlook looks good. I'm very positive about, real estate in general. The Ohio market seems strong. It feels like from a residential standpoint, there's still pretty low inventory scattered throughout the areas that we're serving. So there's a need for housing specifically. Land tends to be really strong, at least from what I'm seeing. The Florida marketplace, which we've been pretty active in here the last couple of months, is a unique one. The auctions that we've done have been very successful, but I continue to keep my eyes on the MLS and the days on market. Some of those things, they're kind of the opposite from the Ohio market that I work in the sense that there is a lot of inventory. And things do seem to be picking up. The hurricanes in 24 really kind of put a damper on the Florida market conditions initially, but I feel like the return of that market is coming quickly. So it's to me, from a buyer's perspective, it's a good time to buy in Florida. It's a good time to stay active in the marketplace there. It feels like there's some really good options coming there. We've had some big equipment sales too recently. I was a little bit unsure of, we just completed the Tate Farms auction in December, end of December, and I was a little concerned going into that sale with the condition of farming, dairy specifically, that it was going to be a little challenging, but it sold really well. So yeah, I feel pretty confident about the markets that I'm working in.
Yeah, you would definitely be involved a little bit more on the ag equipment, heavy equipment end of things. Along with that, I think Ray Yoder has had multiple ProFrac auctions dispersing some of those semi-tractors for that company, and we've seen those continue to be pretty strong across the board, with a lot of those auctions taking place in Texas. Pivoting to you, Pat, you've recently, you and your team have gotten involved a lot more in that far northeastern part of Ohio. What are you seeing as maybe a growing area up there? What are the trends that you're seeing up there?
Especially in the Geauga County area, and it's very similar to our particular area that you look at where the real estate prices have gone locally. Around here, it tends to be wherever the Amish and the Mennonites are moving to as far as the prices go. Very similar up there. Initially it was that Middlefield area. It's kind of expanding out into the Ashtabula, Trumbull, just different areas there. I see a ton of parallels up in the Northeast that are very similar to what we have experienced around here. I feel like they're about 20 years kind of behind where, some of our real estate trends. You get up into that area, the big ticket in town is still horse auctions. You go to a Mount Hope auction, and it's probably primarily Geauga County Amish that are up there. Now, the real estate bug is starting to hit up there, and it's kind of exciting that you can kind of get in at ground level, but I'm excited to see kind of what the next 10, 15 years up in that area, what that brings. As far as vacant ground, different things like that, you're starting to slowly see a lot more guys willing to invest in vacant ground.
So you would say you would say that that area is an up and coming area, that it might be an area that investors maybe need to start looking at a little bit more, where they might not have, traditionally investment has taken place a little bit more in this area or to the south and to the east, especially in the areas where the gas and oil has been heavy.
Absolutely. I think the upside up in some of these areas is that or greater than some of our areas that we come into around here, as far as being able to get in an entry level for what some of their prices are bringing. I mean, you can buy the Geauga area. You can buy, there's prices that are creeping up to the 20,000 an acre range, but that's a big number there. You get outside of that area, you might be lucky to hit 10, 11,000 an acre, where the Amish are just starting to move. Those areas will all increase. I mean, you look at our particular area, it was East Holmes, Sugar Creek area. Now that's spread down to Fresno. It's up in Beach City. They're all over Western Holmes County, where the prices have followed, and it's a matter of time until Bolivar or in some of these other areas start experiencing some of that. Now they have seen a significant growth in those areas, but I think that will only continue.
So if you're giving somebody a hot tip, it's to look where that people group is moving and get ahead of that people group, and even consider maybe some of the areas where new industry is moving in. I know that we've experienced a lot of that with the new plant that Provia put in Strasburg. Yeah.
Did wonders for that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Curt, what is an area that you think, or maybe an asset class that people should be looking into?
Well, I would agree with what you guys have said so far. I think when you look at vacant land, I mean, I understand that sometimes if we're thinking about investors, the cash flow side of land is difficult because, you're not typically getting high land rents if it's ag ground, hunting leases. So, but traditionally, and what I've seen in the past 25 years, is land still is one of the best things to invest in, especially just like you guys said, if you can kind of draw a circle around the current, communities that we're serving, and just take a 5-mile radius search outside of that and start investing into those areas. It's just a matter of time till those values creep up. So, I mean, I love real estate in general. As far as an asset class to get in on, I mean, I think it all depends a little bit on what you as an investor are looking for. If cash flow is a big thing, obviously rentals, but I always challenge people that think that a rental property is just mailbox money and it's just easy. The water heaters do go out. The problems do happen. You do have to work those. So I've seen successful people be very successful in rentals, but they work it. They work hard at it. They make their properties, they improve them, and continue at it. But I like land. Land's one of the safest things, in my opinion, in our growing areas to invest in. So yeah, I think any of those things. I'm a big fan of real estate in general. So I think anybody buying real estate is in the long haul is not going to. It won't be a bad investment for you.
Well, right. Also piggybacking off of that, there's nothing that increases quicker than vacant acreage. You get a 30-acre piece that's worth $8,000 today. 2 years from now, it's worth $10,000 an acre. Well, that's a $60,000 difference, which is rather significant. It's. Do you ever run into this, that it's almost difficult sometimes to sell the appeal to a guy from a Columbus, a Cincinnati, Cleveland about vacant acreage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
They don't get that initial return on their investment. They're not getting rent money back. That they struggle sometimes to see the value that is actually with this.
Yeah, for sure. And even that's why I appreciate our local, banks. They understand the value of vacant land. You get outside with some of these bigger national banks, they put very little value at all on the land itself. Where in our situation with a lot of what we sell, we understand there's a tremendous amount of value in the land. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's hard for a person outside of our community to understand the value of the land that we're selling, but it is a great place to park money if that's what you want to do.
Right. I think we're seeing a little bit more, maybe when it comes to production or tillable acreage, where there is an uptick from a national standpoint, where people are seeing less available tillable ground, and so the values are starting to trend up on that in general. we're talking about things that are positive or tips from a positive standpoint for buyers, investors, and so forth in real estate. What are some of the areas that you guys have seen people get tripped up with? Obviously, we all experienced 2008 to 10 with the downturn and that recession. But what are some areas that you sometimes see people who are getting into real estate, or it could even be something like maybe they're buying gold and silver and things like that. What are some of the things that you guys have seen as potential pitfalls for those people in those areas?
Well, I think we've kind of, a lot of people have, it seems like 2008, you don't hear a lot of these investors that, how do I put it? It doesn't seem like that's near as prevalent as what it was. And I remember going through that and just thinking the sun would never come up again. And you couldn't imagine the market getting any worse. But I also feel like that kind of hampered me a little bit from some of these booms that we have seen. Like the growth that we have seen since 2016 is unprecedented. The growth over the last 6 years is unlike anything that I have yet to experience. But I also feel like that 2008 to 2012 makes me a little almost more pessimistic about, okay, well, when's this downturn coming? Now, nationwide, isn't Florida down about 10% right now?
I think depending on the areas that you're in, that's 10 to 15% is pretty accurate. Obviously, Florida is a second home market. A lot of your owners in Florida and second homes. But one thing that differentiates for the area that Curt's working in specifically is, again, we're looking at the people group that is in that area, and they want to be in that area, and there's only a certain amount of availability in those areas. So I think that changes a little bit from what the overall Florida market would be.
And if this is what we consider a down market, I mean, it's pale in comparison to what we saw in 2008. I mean, in my opinion, the prices are still at or above. If it's the right thing, they're still at or above anything that we saw in 2022. I feel like the buyer pool might have shrunk a little bit, but there's still people willing to pay top dollar for the right property.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, one of the pitfalls I see guys do is they almost maybe they get out over their skis a bit. Maybe they buy 4 properties when they're really capable of handling 2 at the time. When, as long as the prices continue to go up, you're okay. If the market does shift at all and you're sitting there hanging on to properties that you were completely depending upon, let's say your cash flow, for instance, those rents, and then you have a tenant move out and all of a sudden you can't make your payment. Those are the things that I think real estate investing, the biggest thing is it's also a not liquid asset. So when it's easy to acquire, seems like it's easy to make the buy, but it's then, if I need cash, well, there's a process by which that it goes through which you get liquid again to get that cash. So you just got to be careful. We all know that any investment, whether it's gold, silver, equipment, land, properties, anything, you make the money when you purchase. Yes. So you really have to buy the properties in the right price point, and you just have to do your research. When it comes to a piece of land, one of the big things we're always looking at when we get called out to a project is, well, what's the accessibility to the land? Is there a possible, one guy might see a wooded hillside and no access. The next guy looks at it and says, I can cut a driveway in there and improve the property. Can you make improvements to anything that you purchase to add value? Whether that's a house, I can renovate the kitchen, I can do the bathroom, and it's a completely different house. Those are the things that I see. Sometimes people buy things without any vision or without any potential upside that they themselves can improve the property to make it more valuable. Those would be, some of the things that I see, I think, that are pitfalls.
Do you think people get caught up with tunnel vision sometimes on properties like a vacant? What I'm thinking of is obviously hunting is enormous in this area. Sometimes I think people get complete tunnel vision just envisioning how the property is set up to hunt, which is great. I mean, obviously that improves the property, but that's all it has going sometimes for it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes people can't get out of their own head when they look at a property just based on only for the sole purpose of hunting this thing.
Yeah, and I mean, this will be my plug for our company as far as, when you bring in a professional, a real estate agent or whatever, we're looking at all the possibilities. You might be thinking this is a great hunting piece, and we might come in and say, well, you don't have the access. How are you going to get to the property? Various things like that, or even looking at in the future, if I need to, could I sell some timber off? Could I split the property and sell 5 acres off of it if I get in a jam? Those are all things that I think you have to keep in mind. And I agree with you, Pat. Sometimes, and I can tend to do this, you get hyper-focused on what you want and what your vision is, but there might be a whole host of other opportunities with that same piece of property that you just couldn't see.
Right. I think you guys both hit on some key points there. Curt, you mentioned earlier, and I think this is something that needs to be reiterated time and again, is you make your money on a property when you purchase it. It's like buying a stock. If you buy the stock at the peak and assume it's just going to continue to run up, that can be a bit of an issue. I mean, you make your money on real estate or equipment or precious metals, stuff from that standpoint when you purchase it. Another thing, Pat, you brought up, the downturn from 8 to 10. A lot of the reason that stuff happened is prior to that, you had a lot of people investing, and as soon as they had any type of equity in the property, they were cashing that equity out, either taking the cash out or using it to buy another property. And then all of a sudden, interest rates tick up. And it's one of those situations where maybe they lost some tenants, maybe they have different things like that happen. Cash flow isn't there, and you don't have that equity present in the property anymore to be able to maybe refinance if you need to or do something from that standpoint. And I think both of those are excellent points. The other thing that I've seen is that occasionally we take our maybe our knowledge or sensibility for one area and assume that the other area is the same. I know, Pat, you recently sold a large farm in Mahoning County. And in talking to a lot of the potential bidders there, we kept reiterating the idea that this is great recreational property. I mean, you can hunt it, you can use it for these different things. Well, that's not an area where people buy hunting land. They don't buy it for that purpose.
No, they lease it.
Yeah.
I found that out very quickly, that some of the guys that I did talk to, well, yeah, it's a great piece for hunting, and but they also didn't necessarily put any value in it. And they were also hunting the property for free. So that kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to know that. And I think that again goes back to knowing the markets, knowing the areas that you are in. And that becomes a very important thing. So we're going to, as we move towards closing out this session, I would be interested in hearing from you guys something that we're going to have a little bit of a reoccurring segment for our guests, and that is what we're calling the final bid. So just a bit of insight from you guys as to something to be aware of. Maybe, it can be anything, even like a historical thing that has relevance today, or maybe something to be aware of. Just a little bit of a tidbit for you guys, for our audience as we transition out of this.
Well, one thing I would say, that the conversation has kind of went more towards, maybe some potential things for investors, or not even investors as much as just people who are buying real estate or an asset of any kind. The one thing that we do know that, the market's trend, whether that's the stock market, all this stuff, the real estate market, they all have trends. So there's ups and downs. The one thing that I would really strongly, my piece of advice would be, is if you do hold real estate and we do experience a downturn, don't panic. As I've been in this thing now 25 years, when I first started from the years 2000 to about 2006, it was pretty easy. You could throw a sign out and you'd get calls on it. Well, then we know we've already mentioned the 2008, the downturn, the recession, the crash. And then coming up out of that, a lot of people panicked and they were nervous. But those people that were able to hold their properties through that time, including land, coming right out of that was the initial gas and oil boom in our area, which probably helped our local market rebound quicker than anything else. And then the historically low interest rates hit. And so consequently, all of those things if you were constantly in real estate during those times, you caught some serious upswings, even when the downturns looked terrible. So don't panic. I think that's one of the first things I would tell anybody that is interested in real estate in general is, if you buy a piece of property, and I've tried to watch this pretty closely over the time that I've been doing it. If you can hold a property 5+ years, more than likely, including even if you put '08 right in the middle of that 5-year window, coming up out of that, you would have been okay. If you held a property 2 years prior to '08, 2 years after, you would have still been okay, even considering that the housing market literally crashed. So don't panic. Get yourself some good advice. That would be my little tidbit of, if you are interested in real estate in general, don't panic and don't get too excited. Especially our local markets will usually rebound and be safe.
Let me ask you this. Am I too jaded about these cash out refinance options? Or are you a fan of that? I absolutely despise.
Well, I'm not a fan of debt,
refinance.
so I personally don't have the stomach to, cash out all the equity and continue plowing into more. But some people do. I think it goes back to my thing where you don't want to get too far out over your skis. If you're going to do that, make sure that you have a plan B if something changes. Interest rates shift. Well, that can make a big difference. If you're holding the note on a big, a large sum of money. So that would be my opinion. I'm a little bit less risky as well in that sense, so I probably wouldn't advise that. But I guess that's what the stomach of the person investing.
Pat, do you have a final bit or a final insight for us here?
This is just in referring to large parcel auctions. It's amazing how you can have a barn burner of an auction, and yet there's still a good buy to be had at that auction. The main thing is to be present for those things.
Amen.
And then there's a dip in the bidding. Be present, know your prices, know where you want to be on these parcels, and be able to buy it. I had one down in Coshocton that the property brought, $600,000-$700,000 more than we envisioned that it ever could. There was a particular piece there that I think sold for $5,000 an acre, and on the one side you had another piece that brought $7,500. On the other side you had a piece that brought $8,000 per acre, and there was it seemed like everybody was kind of asleep at the wheel. There was an Amish guy that bought this thing, turned around and made good money on that thing in a short amount of time, and the only reason being was he had values on every single parcel, knew exactly where he had to be. I think Bruner's another good example of being present, and he's okay being at an auction if he doesn't buy something, but if there is a dip in those prices, that's what he's there for.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I do appreciate that, Pat, because you have, when you are present, and even if a sale does extremely well, there's always going to be a parcel or two that are under the value of the other parcels or the average. You have immediate build-in equity in that. You have other comparables that will show the value of that property. So that's great insight. So I'm going to leave you with one. Both of you guys have alluded to this. This is something that Dad said for many years. I think 2008 to 10 was a prime example of this. When others walk, you run. So when others are looking away from it, some of the people that built the largest portfolios of real estate that we have seen, be it gas and oil rights, whatever it might be, when everybody else was pulling it in, that's when they were investing. So something to keep in mind there. So thanks again for joining us today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to share this episode with someone who might appreciate it. From all of us here at Kaufman Realty and Auctions, thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Kaufman. We'll see you next time on Kaufman Conversations.